Proposition 62.
Proposition 62. I'm Patrick Baker, by the way. Hello.
Hi, Patrick.
Hi. You may not. I'm a person who's been on this podcast before. I'm not the president of anything. I'm the author of the presidential Dickerbook out by Devastator Press, and I'm here to convince you that 62 is a yes and 62 is a no. We're going to get into that very, very soon. Carlos, is this how you wanted to start your podcast?
This is absolutely perfect.
Perfect. Fantastic. Thanks for letting me hijack this and become the host of Schmolitics. Carlos and Dan are out this week. I will be handling this from here on forward. All right, let's get right into it.
I think Patrick unplugged my microphone.
Dan Gordon, shut up. Okay, and let's keep going. I'm sorry, just cut his mic.
So 62. What do we have for 62?
62 is to end the death penalty, and 66 is to speed up the death penalty.
So we're gonna combine both.
We're going to combine them.
All right, so we have 62, 66.
So it comes down to if you want to end the death penalty or speed up the death penalty or neither. So whichever one gets more votes wins. 62 would replace the death penalty with life in prison without parole, and 66 would speed up the death penalty and require that inmates' wages go to victims, which actually I think they both do.
They do. As far as the wages in 62, right now 50% of an inmate's wages go to remuneration to victims' families. So that's 50% now. 62 wants to make that 60%, and 66 wants to make that 70%. So that's the remuneration thing. Although in my mind, that is an incredibly minor part of both of these.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so what are the major parts of these for you?
Well, the major parts to kind of understand, and first off, I think some numbers are useful. So if you look at 62, and there is a section that talks about the number of people that have been put on death row since 1978 when we reinstated the death penalty. There's something like 930 people that have been put on death row, and then of those people that have been given death sentences, only like 13 of them have been executed. About 100 or so of them died of natural causes. A lot of these people, about 1 in 10, according to I'm looking at the Secretary of State in the non-partial analysis, about 1 in 10 end up being excused from the death penalty. Their sentence gets lowered once they are in prison.
So just to understand this right, so since 1978, when we put the death penalty back into play in California, over 900 people have been sentenced to death.
Yes.
But only 13 have actually been
executed.
Okay.
And part of the reason for that is that, and this is something that both 62 and 66 agree on, which is that the amount of time it takes to get somebody executed is astronomically long. You're looking at about 20 to 25 years.
Why does it take so long?
It takes that long because, well, there's two things that kind of end up gumming up the works here. One is that when you are given a death sentence and you receive a death sentence, you get an automatic appeal that goes to the California Supreme Court. And for people that are going to get, let me back up. As you may imagine, a lot of people who get death sentences aren't exactly of means. We don't have a whole lot of Phil Spectors that are on trial here. So you have to get a public defender. And to get a public defender that is qualified to go before the California Supreme Court requires a little more doing than getting your run-of-the-mill public defender. You need certain attorneys that are more specified. So sometimes it can take 5 years to find that attorney who is willing to take on this complex case. And you also have to pay that attorney more than usual because, again, they have more experience than your average public defender.
Okay, so that's 5 years, and then the next 15 to 25 is all appeals and waiting on hold in line?
Some of that is, first off, just waiting in line for the death penalty in San Quentin. There's also another
That's got to be one of the worst lines to be waiting in.
Yeah,
that's worse than IKEA.
Yeah, it's worth noting that right now, all of our death row inmates all go to San Quentin.
Maybe not on a Saturday. IKEA on a Saturday, just kill me.
It's the worst.
You gentlemen are comparing San Quentin State Prison to IKEA, right?
I bet you they have better furniture.
Yeah.
In San Quentin?
Yeah, sure.
You know what? They might. I don't know. Who am I to say?
Probably better built.
San Quentin is in Marin County, not too far from the Golden Gate Bridge. The other thing that ends up gumming up the works is the habeas corpus petitions. So, and this is going to become more important in 66 than it's going to be in 62. But the habeas corpus petitions are essentially things that come forward where attorneys will come forward for the death row inmates and go, here are the reasons why the past sentencing was incorrect. Often the attorney wasn't effective, or the jury was not selected appropriately. These sorts of things.
So there's a lot of reasons why it can get backed up, and now you're looking at this a very long period of time, multiple decades, where someone that's been sentenced to death is waiting on death row,
Yes.
Seeking an appeal, or just waiting for the execution, and that costs the state a lot of money.
It does, and the result of this has been nearly everybody that gets a death sentence doesn't get executed.
Okay, so then these two propositions are offering solutions for that problem.
Yes.
Okay.
62 is offering a solution that is stop the death penalty. And we can talk about the pros and cons of that. In my mind, there are pros and cons that go in the moral camp and then under what I would argue a fiscally pragmatic camp. And then for 66, the idea is to make tweaks to the existing system that should speed up the process of habeas corpus petitions, should speed up the process of finding appellate lawyers, those sorts of things. So 62 specifically wants to get rid of the death penalty and also wants to raise the remuneration that we were talking about from 50% of an inmate's
60,
income
right,
to 60.
right.
Yeah.
In 66, there's a few more things going on.
So, okay, so what are the other things going on?
So the
Quick
other things
list.
going on, and let's quickly, I want to look at the list to make sure I'm not missing anything, because there's actually a couple. If you are looking at your California voter guide, you are looking on page 105.
Different guide.
So
that's
keep going,
fine.
keep going,
No,
keep going.
So yeah, so in the California General Election Handbook, it's page 105. So habeas corpus petitions that I was talking about must first be heard in trial courts as opposed to appellate courts. So what would more often happen is the court where you were first tried for murder, or did you first got your death penalty, that will be where your habeas corpus petition is heard. There are reasons that is a problem, in my opinion, and we'll talk about that later.
Well, we don't have a lot of time, so give me like 2 or 3 bullet points why it's a bad idea now.
One reason that's a bad idea is that if there was a mistake in your trial, say the lawyer was ineffective or the jury was inappropriately chosen, why would you go back to the same court where that happened to try and say, hey, there was a mistake? That court has a conflict of interest in saying, oh, you know what, we did mess this up. That doesn't make a lot of sense. You would want to go to a second court to reassess whether or not the first court messed up. So the other things that you would have going on, you wouldn't have all of your inmates on death row in San Quentin.
On 66?
On 66.
Okay.
Right now, everybody who is on death row is kept in San Quentin, and
Where would they be instead?
other maximum security facilities throughout California.
So the idea is it would save money that way.
That's the idea. However, people who are against 66 would tell you that you're just going to have to build the same facilities for less inmates across California.
But here's 2 questions that I have. Are we talking about 900 people?
We are talking about close to 900. We're
Okay.
talking about more like at this juncture, we're probably talking about 700, 800 people.
Here's my question. So I understand the idea that we shouldn't, that it costs so much money to keep appealing death penalty sentences, right?
Mm-hmm.
What's the difference in price? And you don't have to have this number, just something to think about. If you get life in prison without parole, can you appeal that?
If you get life in prison, yes.
So these people will
can.
continue to appeal that in this.
And this is actually something that the Secretary of State points out,
Yeah.
which is that, so right now, something that happens, and this is one of what I think is the few arguments that could be for 66, is that right now, when someone looks like they're going to get a death sentence, they will sometimes plead guilty early in hopes of getting life in prison. If you take away that stick, you may end up with more people going, you know what, let's appeal all the way to the top.
Right.
With that said, now that you're talking about the fiscal impact, I want to point out the fiscal impact between 62 and 66. So first off, we haven't even spoken about this yet. I am of a belief that there is a moral issue here. If we are not killing that many people, and we can kind of all agree that killing is not a thing we want to do.
Not a thing.
I personally feel like we can all get on board with saying, so we're fighting really, really hard here to kill 13 people over the course of 20 to 30 years. That seems like a lot of fighting just for that little revenge pit that sits in your gut. And if you read through a lot of the
That was
reasons-
actually the sound of the revenge pit in my gut right there.
That was right there. And so when you read through the pros and cons in the California book, you're going to see a lot of people for 66 mentioning that these are the worst of the worst. You know, child rapists, child murderers. They go into specific cases that are pretty grisly. They try and be like, we have to kill these people. But the fact of the matter is that your odds of killing that person under the current system and even under 66's system are still slim. Like, there's a lot of unknown things with 66. Like, for instance, fiscally, and let's get away from the moral quandary for a second.
Okay.
The nonpartisan analysis says definitively that 62 would save us about $150 million a year. The nonpartisan analysis says we may save money with 66 or we may raise money. It's unclear.
Gotcha.
It seems to me that it really comes down to the moral issue of, do you believe the state should, as a form of justice, be killing people?
I think that's one, but I think even if you're for capital punishment and you are a conservative who is for capital punishment, you can look at the numbers here and go, this doesn't make sense as is. Even 66, which its own proponents argue in the book that you could save $30 million a year. And that's disputed. People don't agree on that. But their proponents are saying you could save up to $30 million if you put 66 in. Compare that to $150 million if you just scrap the whole thing.
Right.
And I think here is a moral issue that Dan pointed out, which is, I don't know what you guys have heard about prison. It sucks. And if you had to live there forever, that's real bad.
Yeah.
Like, I find, I've never been to prison, but I've seen the Shawshank Redemption. And from what I can gather, that seems about as bad as dying in a lot of ways. So I'm not convinced that...
I really didn't like that movie.
Yeah, that's
a great movie.
Oh, I thought you meant the
Oh, I
movie
thought
was
you
felt like as
didn't
bad
like
as
the
dying.
movie, yeah.
Oh, no. The prison in the movie.
Oh,
It's an excellent movie.
That one security guard was awful.
he was the worst.
He's a very good
mean old
actor.
cuss.
Very good actor.
Oh, yeah.
Also the warden.
Did you say cuss?
Yeah.
Mean old cuss?
Yeah.
Yes.
I was trying to... Shawshank, I was trying to keep
And
it...
then he used words.
So, Patrick, where do you stand on 62 and 66?
I think you should vote yes on 62 and no on 66.
It's a yes on 62 for Patrick and a no on 66 for Patrick. Carlos,
Yeah.
where do you stand on 62 and 66?
What Patrick said.
Really?
Yeah.
So, I'm surprised because Carlos and I had this conversation a few weeks ago, and he was at the... Can I share?
Yeah, you can share.
At the time was against 62 and for 66. He was against. He was for speeding up the death penalty, and we had a long conversation about it, which included me referencing Bruce Wayne, saying that he was not happier after killing the Joker, and he started to shift a little bit. So to hear you,
Yeah.
saying
But
that-
it was Patrick, not you.
What did I say that changed your mind?
Everything.
Great.
Yeah.
I also
No, it was also you.
I also am for 62 and against 66. And I just want to add that this also would ensure that an innocent life is not taken by a flawed system of justice. And I think that's incredibly important. And you can also look into this and find plenty of families of victims who are supporting ending the death penalty in California. It does not bring us justice by killing people.
Yes, 62.
Yes on 62.
No on 66.
No on 66.
All right.
I really feel like a crappy person when I'm smiling doing that.
I know.
Talking about the death
It's like
penalty.
Made me feel icky.
Yeah, me too.
No
All
on,
right.
Yes on 62.
Patrick, thank you.
You're very welcome.
No on 66.
Great.
I felt worse.